please let us know in the chat if you'd like to ask a question. And we'll start with Elaine St. James.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Elaine.
What gives you confidence about the Wings headed into this season?
Well, we, as you know, we made several changes. We signed some free agents in the off season with the idea that would improve our team. We're hopeful that all our young players continue to take a step forward, and again, with all the hope of becoming a better hockey team. I believe we'll be a better hockey team this year. I expect us to be. Having said that, with a lot of changes, it can take some time for things to settle in, including a new coaching staff. It can take some time for everybody to get familiar with one another, the coaches to really know the players and how to best utilize them and get the most out of them. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I expect us to be a better hockey team, and I hope that translates to more wins.
I know, playoffs are ultimately the goal, but what does building on last season maybe look like realistically? I mean, we've talked a lot about improving defensively. Is that maybe the top aspect?
Well, certainly, I think we were 30th in goals against in the league. We were, our special teams, both power play and penalty killing, were at the bottom of the league. We want to obviously improve in all those areas so that'll translate to wins. So defensively, we have to cut the goals against down, whether that's through play. Hopefully, the players that we brought in on that play the position improve our team, and then collectively, the whole mindset of the team has to change a little bit. And it's not like we're not going to try and score. We want to do that as well, but there is a certain responsibility for all players when they're on the ice to have in the back of their mind, regardless of where the puck is to be on the right side of the puck. And sometimes the right side of the puck is defensively, and managing the puck. All those things will be attributes or ideas that Derek and his staff are going to really have to firmly implant in the players' minds. So when they're out there playing, they have to think responsibly, and that's what good teams do.
Last one for me, just with Simon Edmondson, is he maybe as poised or prepared as you can be? I mean, World Juniors, the SHL, to come in and stake a claim for an NHL job?
Simon's 19, 1 year from his draft. Moritz had the benefit of, playing a year in the American League and then going over during the pandemic and playing a year in Sweden. So got that extra year of development before he stepped in. I think Simon has and tell you he's definitely going to be in the lineup on opening night. But we were pleased with a lot of the things we saw in the prospects tournament and the 3 games that he played. But I do believe playing, the Swedish league the Swedish Hockey League is a very good league, very competitive, a lot of good hockey players, and it's a great stepping stone for the NHL. Playing in the World Juniors this summer is a tremendous tournament to play in, and great preparation to come into camp. So he's a good athlete. He had a great season last year and a good off season. So we'll see how he does.
Thanks, Steve.
Ted Colfin.
Hey, Steve, you touched on it obviously when he was hired, but what does Derek bring to the table? What are his strengths? What should we expect from him?
Well, I think the fact that he's come from, been a part of, as recently as last year, a team that's been in the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row, worked with, great players. The system that Tampa played is a very effective style of play. I think he'll bring maybe not exactly the same way that John Cooper would run things, but he'll do it in his own way. But I would assume, and I expect, year in Tampa where they got swept in the first round of the playoffs, tremendous learning experience, and able to take that into the next 3 seasons. So I think he, valuable experience for him his time in Tampa, and at the other levels as a head coach, whether it be the American Hockey League, the East Coast League, and junior hockey and USHL. As a head coach, he's got that experience as a head coach. The only thing he hasn't done is do it in the NHL. So I think all of that prepares him to do this job. We obviously talk a lot prior to hiring him as the head coach about philosophy, where one philosophies on coaching, on systems on the ice, how he wants his team to play, how he handles situations, and how he's going to get the most out of this collection of players. So, but ultimately, I think one of his greatest communication skills with everybody that he has to touch, or to work with, whether it be the players most importantly, but management, staff, even the media. I think he's and talking with everybody that has worked with him, they all point that out as one of his greatest strengths.
Hey, Steve, I mean, like you touched on it, a lot of new faces, new coaching staff, for goodness sake. As far as chemistry, is that just coming onto the ice every day, coming to practice every day, and just working through it and getting more comfortable with each other, basically?
Well, I think it starts with character, and building a team, guys buying into the program, and wanting to be a part of it and willing to put the team first, and then it moves into the work ethic on and off the ice, and the commitment to the team, both on and off the ice. So, and where players play, who they play with, get to know the coaching staff, the way things are done. The players coming in from other organizations, just getting to know one another. And I think it's a good start, us being here in Traverse City. You get the players all here together. They spend their 3 hours each day in the morning, and then they get the opportunity, whether it's to go play golf or to socialize in many ways, go for dinner and start to build the relationships and get to know one another.
Hey, last one, and obviously everybody's talking about it, just your relationship with Scott Harris. I mean, how long have you known him, and what do you
I can't tell you. I know of him very well, and following, his time with the Cubs. I actually got a chance. Chelly took me to a game in Chicago, and he knew the Cubs staff very well. I can't remember; it was a few years ago now, but got a chance to sit with Scott and the management team of the Cubs. That was my initial meeting with them during a game, and picked their brain. They were very gracious and polite to me, and bothering them in the middle of a game. So that was my first meeting, and then we got Scott was in town and talked a little bit about Detroit, about the different companies, about the Red Wings, about philosophies on building a team, pick his brain a little bit. So I really enjoyed the meeting. Look forward to in the future picking his brain more. As a wealth of experience and knowledge. For me, he's significantly younger than I am, but and a very tremendous education and background, not only scholastically, but in the business of baseball and the business of pro sports. So I really look forward to exchanging ideas, from learning and observing and watching Scott lead the Tigers forward.
A lot younger than a lot of us, Steve. Hey, thanks for this. Good stuff.
Ansar Khan.
Yeah, hi, Steve. What are some of the the challenges for guys coming off strong rookie years like Seider and Raymond that they face in their second season when the league is a little bit more familiar with them?
Yeah, I think one is each individual's expectations. It was hard. You mentioned Lucas and Moritz. You asked about last year. It was hard work, and to every day to show up and play and practice and perform. You look to build off that and get better. It can. We all hope everyone, including those two young guys, get off to a great start. Sometimes it doesn't always happen, and you just kind of got to focus on playing where there was no expectation last year. It was all new. Things don't necessarily always go as planned, and you just got to learn to roll with it and just kind of stick with it and get better. I'm confident in both of those kids with their attitude that they will continue to become better hockey players. And that doesn't necessarily mean goals and assists. It just means overall hockey players. But the challenge is expecting it to get easier. Unfortunately, it never gets easier. it ultimately gets harder and harder. You just get more comfortable with it.
And do you have any updates on the injured guys as far as time frames for guys like Fabry and Wallman
Yep.
and Pissick?
Yeah, I'll run through it, and I don't have notes in front of me, but if I miss somebody, please remind me. But it starts with Robbie Fabry. I anticipate, and it's a cautious return for Robbie, but I expect him sometime in the new year, sometime after January 1, maybe January 15th in there, but sometime after the new year, Robbie will come back. Mark Pissick realistically is probably in that same time frame. Jake Wallman, I expect him approximately middle of November to be back. That is 4. 5-1 injury that you're not aware of, but Andrew Kopp had abdominal surgery in the off season. We expect him to be at the latest back the first week of the regular season. I don't anticipate him participating in the preseason games, but expect him to be ready to go at roughly a week, if not sooner, into the regular season. Am I missing anybody from the big club?
I don't think.
Training camp will be Chase Pearson, who played a little bit for us at the end of the season last year, played in Grand Rapids. Chase will be out indefinitely. He's dealing with some personal things and will be out indefinitely.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
John Neo.
Hey, Steve, just wondering, what was your message to Zadina this offseason? I guess, what do you want to see from him this fall? And is there a chance that maybe a fresh start with a new staff and a new contract too, I guess, can really help him?
Well, we met at the end of the season, and my message really to Philip was, I believe he's on the right path to becoming a real good player in the NHL. He's working at it. He's learning to be little things well, even if you're not scoring. It goes to all young players, all scorers in particular. Always measure yourself on goals and assist production, and it's always, whether you're playing junior, whether you're playing in the American League, in the NHL, and wants to see the goals and assists, measure it in goals and assists, and you fall into that yourself, thinking I got to produce. Ultimately, if you do all the other things well, the pucks will go in the net for you. So my message was to Philip is continue to work at it, continue to do all the little things well, and the pucks will go in the net for you. That was my message for him. And he's a hard worker. I think he's he's beyond the being picked 6th overall, and that now he's working to he worked hard last year when I talked to our staff, our strength coaches and whatnot, his dedication off the ice. He really wants to be a good player and knows he's got things to improve upon. But again, I think I expect him to take another step forward, and I think his attitude is excellent. His work ethic is excellent, and that he just needs to stick with it.
And then on a different note, I guess, prospect wise, what did you see and like from what you saw from Kosa here in this camp?
Yeah, he played half of 2 games, but it was for me very positive. He, I know he and Phil and our staff have worked a lot on technique and stance and calming down, and just he was drafted in a season where he played 22 games. It was funny, like an odd time, and he just needs time on the ice, reps. I think a lot of those kids that played Canadian junior hockey that year, unfortunately, didn't play a lot. Some didn't play at all, and in particular for goaltenders who don't necessarily play every game, he just needs time. And what I did, you see him, he's filling out physically. He's starting to look, he's very tall, but he's also starting to look wider, take up more space in the net. Technically, he's looking a little bit sounder, and he'll continue to work at it. So it was very encouraging to watch the two outings that he had here last week.
Thanks, Steve.
Max Boltman.
Hey, Steve, just to follow up on that, how do you kind of balance that with Kosa as you decide where to play him this year, knowing, you want to get him as many reps as possible versus, hands-on work with your goalie coaches?
Yeah. Well, number one, I think he needs to play games. That's most important. You taught your all the goalie coaches and your staff talk about number of starts these players need before they're theoretically ready to start. There's no specific, but they have some general timelines, and he's got he just needs experience. Most importantly, we want him to play. We want him to be in a good environment and playing a lot. Max, I can't tell you today where that is. We're going to let the process play itself out. It starts with training camp here. He did well in his outings in the prospects tournament. We'll see how he does in the main camp, and we're comfortable. Let him, get into the preseason games, and then just one step at a time, and decide what level he's ready for and what level he's going to play a lot.
And then with Edvinsson, you touched on, him having a chance to make the team. What would be the things that you want to see? He's ready for that and it's the right decision for him.
Well, again, I think a lot of it, again, as we say with Sebastian Kosa, is I want him playing. I want him playing regular. I don't want him in and out of the lineup. I don't want him not getting an opportunity on special teams, at least one of the units. So we'll figure out what level he's ready for. He will, participate in the preseason. Again, number one, he's only 19. Most importantly, that they play. We watch the benefits of all of our young guys, whether they're in Europe, the American League, or junior in college, playing a lot in all different situations, developing as players in games. I believe that's the way to go, and we'll kind of let his play dictate, number one, in the preseason, how much he plays, and then we'll make a decision at this point that we have to decide. But most importantly, Max, I want him playing a significant role, like a sixth defenseman. I want him to be obviously in the top six playing games, and then I'd like to see him, participating in special teams in some form. And if that's not the case, then we'll decide where to go from there.
I guess with how many young D you're going to have in Grand Rapids, between the guys who are coming over and the ones who were there last year, like, are you almost hoping that one of those, it's not so crowded in Grand Rapids?
With the two injuries on our blue line, with Mark and Jake being out to start the season, that gives opportunity for other guys to play and maybe grab a spot. And once everybody's healthy, it's a great problem to have. You asked me about a couple of guys that played last week. You look on the D, two new guys that come over from Euro performed very well last week as well. And Seth Barton was here, who played in GR. We got a lot of D, a lot of young guys. And again, if they're ready to play and they're ultimately, better than, say, some of the veterans, then we might have to make a decision. But we'll kind of let that play itself out. But I'm encouraged that we have some young guys that are going to push not only in GR but push in Detroit. And like I say, with those couple of injuries, it's to start the season, it gives some guys a great chance, to grab a spot.
And then last thing for me, you talked about kind of getting to know Scott Harris. Chris Illich said you were kind of involved in that search. Like, what was that experience like for you to be part of a search in a different sport?
Yeah. What Chris did was he had his candidates meet some of the other business leaders, people within the other organizations under Illich Holdings, to get a feel for who we all are, the kind of the culture within the companies, the way we do things. And I really enjoyed it. We sat down, I got a chance to talk with him. Honestly, I could so many different topics, picking his brain. So I really enjoyed meeting the candidates. I think they appreciate that, getting to know the people within not just the Red Wings, but within all the different companies and how we go about things. So it was really enjoyable for me to get to spend some time with these gentlemen.
Thank you.
Tom Galletti.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for doing this. You mentioned earlier being cautiously optimistic. With the moves you made, though, do you feel like the expectations have been raised? Obviously, you've been going through rebuild here. Do you feel like the players have grasped that here there's more, that this isn't just this is the next step in what you're trying to do?
I think, in talking with some of the players off and on throughout the offseason, I think some of the younger players that are coming over, maybe one or two of them move into the lineup and make us a better team. So I think there's some optimism within the ranks of our players. What they do, it's important they recognize there's some competition, not only for jobs, but ice time. And I believe that competition is really healthy, and it's going to push guys to perform. And I do believe good athletes, mentally strong guys really enjoy that challenge. I think they recognize that. They have to, some of the players that have to recognize, hey, I gotta perform here. I might lose my spot. And that, as Max pointed, that goes to Grand Rapids as well. Like, we've got some depth at a lot of positions now. Hopefully that translates to us being a better team as well. But I think it's an eye opener for the players that, hey, I've really got to produce or perform, not produce, but perform to get my ice time.
You were obviously a captain. What have you seen in Dylan Larkin's growth into that role in the 2 seasons he's been captain?
Yeah, I think he's getting, he's feeling his way along when, how to deal with whether it's an on ice situation, off ice situation, whatever it may be. You get a little bit more comfortable over time where, when to address things. I lean on Dylan a lot. I think Derek's going to lean on him a lot, just for, get a sense of different situations, both again on and off the ice, from these players' perspective. I think he's just getting more and more comfortable with the role, and the one thing I've always encouraged him to do is just make sure, be yourself. Don't try to be Nick or Henrik or any of us in the past. Just be yourself. I do really think he cares about his teammates. He cares about the team. So again, I think it just, with each year, you kind of figure the role out, where you need to be, when you need to be there, when you need to address something, when you need to let things slide. So I think Tom, just experience is making him more comfortable in the role.
And last thing from me, how eager are you to see what Jacob Verana can do in a full season? Obviously, he did some good stuff after the trade, and then last year with the injury. What can he put together in a full season?
Well, he certainly has shown his time with the Red Wings that he can score. He put the puck on his stick. He has that mentality to get it on and off his stick really quickly. He knows where to go to get open. I think he did score goals when he came back at the end of the year. I'd like him to be more impactful in other areas of the game. Like, he's very good. I'm not sure what Derek has planned as far as power play units and where these guys will play. But he's very effective on that as well. He, like all of our players, if we're going to win hockey games, we want these guys all to really, be conscientious defensively. He's a goal scoring winger, and we expect him to do that. But like all of our guys, we're going to insist that they have some defensive.
Bob Duff.
Steve, do you feel, I guess, better about where you're at as an organization now? I mean, you draft guys, you have hope, but now you're starting to see them in action and making the move over here. Does it give you confidence that things are trending in the right direction?
Not sure confidence is the right word. I hope things are trending in the right direction. I expect them to. I like, the free agents, being able to add some free agents, address some needs through free agency. I think that, it makes us a deeper team. I think that makes us a better team. But as you see, some of the young players that are drafted even prior to me coming, it takes time. You look at Michael Rasmussen last year, his growth into becoming what I consider an NHL regular last year, that by the end of the season was having a very positive impact. And is that 4 or 5 years, 4 years post his draft. It just takes time, as we, keep saying over and over. and gradually we're starting to see some of these younger guys move into the lineup, have an impact on the lineup. I think we're seeing some progress. I think it's, I believe in the way we're doing it, and I think we're going to improve. I'm hopeful that we're a better team this year, and I say that very with the idea to be better. Sometimes it's just not a linear path, and but I expect us to be better, and I'm optimistic, and I'm encouraged to see younger players moving into the lineup and playing a bigger role. We saw it last year. I'm hoping to see one or two more in this year and continue on with that.
With Edvinsson, you mentioned the fact that Seider got to play here in the AHL. He had experience on the North American ice that Simon doesn't have. Do you think that's more vital for a defenseman because their job is so difficult?
Yeah, probably. I think, just what I found playing on the bigger ice surface, and you see it like for the D-men, things happen a lot quicker. Guys are on top of you. You don't have as much room in the corners to maybe, deke and dive a little bit. That, you run out of room very quickly. So it's, there is an adjustment I think it's just a harder position to play in general. Forwards, your mistakes. There's a lot of guys that got, your D cover up for you, your line mates cover up for you, and the goalie covers up for you. For the D, they got the goalie to cover up for them. If he doesn't do it, you're in trouble. So what I am encouraged by, like, he has played a lot. These kids play so much international hockey. We talked about the World Juniors this summer. He's played a lot on the North American ice surface. What I do think, particularly with the puck, on the smaller, the D-men need to learn then to move it quicker. Less is more. We always refer to Nick Lidstrom. He got it. He moved it. He kept the game very simple. He never really put himself in bad spots. So Simon looks like, in watching him last week, he looked pretty comfortable on the ice. He gets it. He moves it. But really the highest level, and again, I think his play on North American rinks throughout his junior career gives him a good idea on what to do.
And lastly, the word leaking out yesterday, it appears Canada is going to eliminate the COVID vaccination requirement to come to the country. So that would mean, I don't know if Tyler's had a change of heart. We haven't talked to him since last year, but assuming he still hasn't had it, that means he can actually be able to play those 10 games in Canada. What would that mean to have a guy?
I read that yesterday. I don't know if it's September 30th they're talking about. So hopefully that is true. That looks like it opens the door to get back to normal for him to have the ability to play in Canada, which will help us. We missed 10 games, at some point, not only with the three teams in our division and then the Western teams playing in Canada, we get, one of our guys been on our first power play unit. He's been on our top set, one of our first two lines every year, and that will continue. To lose them for those games is tough. And if by chance we win more games, we're more competitive this year, those points are more and more important to us eventually to push for a playoff spot, whether it's this year or next year or whatnot. And then the likelihood of us playing a team in our division in Canada when we become a playoff team is pretty high. So we expect, we're a better team with Tyler Bertuzzi in the lineup. So if that is in fact the truth, that's that's good news for us and good news for Tyler.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Larry.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Good, Larry. How are you?
I'm good. And how much does it give you hope that potentially they are, top end all-star players that, all franchises need to win significant games?
So what's your question, Larry? Sorry.
So basically, my thought is the Red Wings have struggled because they haven't had top end all-star players. And I'm not suggesting Raymond and Seider are that this year, all-stars, but they potentially track to me as being what this franchise is missing. But what is your opinion about that?
Well, you certainly, good teams have good players. You look at Colorado win the Stanley Cup last year, some of the players they have on that team obviously that's goes without saying. You need top players to win in the league. Where you mentioned those two young guys, they're good young players. They would both, they'd be the first to. I think they have tremendous potential. I think both really good young men, and I think they're both really driven. So I expect them to continue to get better. And again, ultimately, we need good players. And we talk a lot about the lottery, not having the success, moving up at least in the lottery. But we've been very, very fortunate and lucky to have these kids come in and have a real positive impact. And again, I mentioned Michael. We've got Joe Valeno coming, Philip Zadina. I still have expectations for him to improve as a player, and we're going to continue hopefully to add these young players through the draft. And but you look at the top teams in the league, they got elite players, and there's different ways to win a Stanley Cup. You don't necessarily have to have that uber superstar or whatnot. We watched St. Louis with a tremendous, really well-balanced team win the Stanley Cup a couple years ago. So there's lots of different a large group of good players to compete at that.
Art Regner.
Hi, Steve.
Art, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. A couple of follow-up questions. We've heard this thing about Edvinsson that he's goes. Mo had an extra year. Yet when I look at Simon's stats for Frölunda last year, they're very comparable to what Mo did in the SHL. So when we're talking about a year behind, are you referring more to perhaps physical development more than mental? Because, he seems to be kind of, he everything that's come his way, he's handled very, very well. Hopefully that makes sense.
I do agree with you. Yeah, he's handled things very well. I guess I look at it, Mo's a year older, obviously. He had a year in the American League, a year in the Swedish League. Simon's just, coming 1 year post-draft. We're going to see. I'm trying to temper the expectation for him a little bit. I really, when Moritz came over, I was worried about him playing in the American League as an 18-year-old. I wasn't sure how he would do. Honestly, I didn't even know if he would be able to handle it. American League's tough. It's a physical league. The schedule is a grind, and he did really well. Simon has a lot of excellent attributes physically. He did play well, and that Swedish league, as I stated earlier, is a very competitive, very good league. He played on a good team in a very good program on a good D-core, and he benefited a lot from that. Is it possible for him to step in and play in the NHL and be an impactful player? Yes, it is. But let's just wait and see. I wouldn't have predicted. I was, again, last year, even for Mo, honestly, he exceeded what my initial expectations were for him. And we'll just see how Simon does here. And if he's ready, great. If he's not, that's okay. I think he's going to be a real good player in the league. And it's just, is it this year or is it at Christmas?
Kosa at 19, he does not lack confidence. He has stated several times, even during the prospects week here, that he wants his first year of pro hockey to be like right now. And there is this thing about maybe, especially for goalies at 19, that a majority of them are sent back to their junior teams. Yet, I am wondering, I've never thought that age was a big factor for you. I mean, if a kid can play, he's going to play. So is it because he's 19? Do you look at that and say, man, he's probably ticketed for junior? Or are you just, hey, whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, I don't have him necessarily ticketed anywhere right now. Let's see. Our options are the Detroit Red Wings, the Grand Rapids Griffins, and Toledo, or we could send him back to play junior as an overage for a year. Those are the options, and ultimately, I want him playing regularly, and I want him playing at a level that he is challenged but can be successful. I think that. Is most important at this stage of the game. Bob mentioned it. I think it was Bob mentioned how tough it is playing as a defenseman, which it is. Goaltending is a whole other level, specifically for these young players. Are very cautious, confident they are. You struggle in net. I couldn't imagine that. Like you know, as a forward, you rely on your teammates when things aren't going well, more so than anybody else. The D-men relying on their teammates, the goalie. Who's the goalie got to back them up? You know, so I'm very cautious. Level, he is getting an ice time and is challenged and doing well, and that's where I want him to play.
All right, and one final quick question, Steve. Jonathan Berggren, whom we haven't really mentioned, just set the most points by any rookie in Grand Rapids history. He's seen the AHL. What are your expectation levels for him? Is he certainly a possible candidate to make this roster on opening night?
You know what? I think Jonathan had an outstanding year last year. Really, he was pushed. He was challenged by Sean Horkoff, Dan Cleary, who oversee the player development, to really work on things. Ben Simon and the coaching staff. He did a really good job. He adjusted well. I saw him here in Detroit last week. He's in excellent shape. He really had a very good year. I'm glad you bring him up, because he quietly went transitioning his game to maybe being a little bit more successful or productive on the North American ice surface in a different league. So I'm here in the preseason, and he's an interesting one. He's worked really hard and very happy with his attitude and determination. And we'll see how he does here in the preseason, but it's one for all of us to follow closely.
Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Yep.
Kevin Allen.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for doing this earlier. And last year, as you mentioned, he seemed to embrace the role he was given and improved in it, and seemed to be a force at the end. But, a new coach is coming in, and I wonder, is there an opportunity for him to expand his role? I mean, now that he's shown that he can certainly do that, the role he was given, but is there more of an opportunity for him to move up?
Well, there definitely is. Ultimately, the coaches are going to play who's performing the best, who helps them win the most games. I think Michael took a significant step last year. I've been here for 3 years, and I've gotten to know him, and I've watched him mature as a young man on the ice, off the ice. His work ethic, it's been really positive for us, and I think Michael feels really good about it. He's worked really hard to get where he's at, and I think he's really determined to continue improving as a hockey player. So, he's a big guy. His skating is good. He's good at down low. Again, like all our guys, we're gonna try to continue to harp on them becoming good two-way players, and that's going to go for everyone, Michael included. But there's definitely room for him, for all guys to move forward and move up. And you can never have too many good players. And I think we're far from having really motivated and really driven. And Michael in particular, his confidence is growing as he sees he puts the work in and the changes in his game and in his performance. And I think that's just push and get better.
As I was watching the prospect tournament, I was kind of struck by, we're at the stage in the rebuild where you had a fair, a good number of your prospects were here for that. And I wondered kind of what your assessment was of, considering that you had guys coming over from Europe and Soderblom and Vero and Johansson and everything. Is the progress overall, just in general, of your prospects about where you thought it would be? Are you a little bit ahead? But what's your assessment generally of where your prospects are?
Again, I think we have some prospects, Kevin. Some of them aren't here, whether it's Casper in Sweden or Carter Mazer at college, several of our guys at college. So we have a group that we're starting to put, amass a pool of prospects that are going to eventually work their way into the lineup. Not all of them will make it, but it was encouraging to see some of those kids here and perform well and getting closer to becoming NHLers. So we just kind of again stick with the process. Where my intention at this time to hold on to our draft picks and continue to draft well, or try to draft well, excuse me, and just be patient with these young guys and let them work their way into becoming NHLers.
Yeah, and then finally, when you're rebuilding, you don't talk much about what's going on in the division, at least not early in the process. But you're at the point now where I think fans, and I'm betting you do too, looked around this summer and saw what teams within your division were doing. Ottawa improved, Buffalo's got a couple of good young players coming. What is your assessment of kind of where you're at in the division now? It's gone through some changes this summer.
Yeah, Kevin, I think we're in a very exciting division right now. You look at the not necessarily the rebuilding teams, but if you start with Toronto, Tampa, and Florida, all have their nucleuses for the foreseeable future kind of locked in, and they're pretty impressive nucleuses. And then, so I think they're going to be good teams very good teams for the foreseeable future. You mentioned Buffalo, from where I sit, have drafted extremely well and are moving their young players into the lineup. They continue to get better. Ottawa has an excellent group of young players and made some moves this summer to improve their team. I think they're a better hockey club. In Montreal, drafting so high and so many draft picks coming in over the last year and this year and even next year. Our division is interesting. You got the good teams at the top and the rebuilding teams starting to move their younger players in. So we're in a tough division, and we look to get to improve and to remain competitive with these teams. It's not going to be easy.
Thank you very much.
Last question, Carlos Monarez.
Yeah, hey Steve, you talked about you expect the team to be better this year. How do you measure that improvement? Are there like hard statistical benchmarks that you want the team to meet in various areas, or is there some other way that you're going to measure that improvement?
Yeah, Carlos, I think the most obvious is at the end of the season, the wins and losses. That would be it. But more importantly for me, I look at, we can talk about all the new advanced statistics and all that. They lead to ultimately, are your goals against, the best teams in the league reduce their chances against. Your special teams are good. So I look at those areas. If we can, reduce the chances against, reduce the shots against, generate more chances, generate more shots. Those statistics produce more victories. So I want, if our team can be in, a harder team to play against, be more competitive in games, that's improvement for us. That's advancing for us. So, that I hope it translates in points in the standings. We're all going to look at, I think 32 wins this year. We can go, whether it's, any number, pick a number above 32, that's progress. But more importantly, as a hockey team, being harder to play against, and that is, I'll kind of keep harping on it, is being stronger defensively is most important. And I think we goals against, our shots against, our chances against, improve our special teams. That should translate to wins. But even if it doesn't this year, we're on the right path.
This is my last question is just, you guys were 6 points out of a wild card spot, I think in like mid-February. So now you have a better coach, you got better free agents, you got better draft picks. Your team president's probably better because he's more experienced and savvier. Would it be crazy to expect at least like a push for the playoffs toward the late part of the season?
Carlos, I'm not prepared to say that. I look at our season last year. We looked at our we're concerned. You look at your schedule, obviously our goals against was a concern, and we were beating teams. It was progress. I felt it was progress because the teams that we expected for the most part to be competitive against, we were. And then we had a lot of, play the top teams in the league on the road in the second half of our schedule. And, even the first part of the schedule, when we went on the road against real good teams, we weren't all that competitive. I think we won a game in Boston, 1-0 when, Ned stood on his head to win us that game. But to me, all the indicators of us were, I don't think we're ready to contend last year. in the second half, it kind of brought us back down to earth. So, I go this season, we'll see. And be more competitive on the road, match up a little bit better against the top teams when we go into their building. If we can win on back-to-back nights, that would give me some optimism that hey, maybe we can push for it. But for me to talk about the playoffs now, it's so far off. And I just, as we're talking about our division, if you kind of today, not knowing what's going to happen, but today you'd say, probably Toronto, Tampa, and Florida. There's the three teams in our division we expect to make the playoffs, and you pick whichever three in the Metro. Then the rest of us are competing for 2 wildcard spots, and it's a real challenge. So I'm hoping we're there, but time will tell, and I'll be able to give you a better answer. I don't know, pick a point in the season. Maybe we can revisit it.
Opening night. Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Thanks, Carlos.
All right. Those are all the questions we had today. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We just heard from General Manager Steve Yzerman before the start of training camp tomorrow here in Traverse City. Some interesting things that he said. He always says a lot without saying a lot at the same time, but he definitely gave us some updates as we head into a new season.
Quite yet, but Simon Edvinsson, he said he's not promising anything, but it is very likely that he will be cracking the Detroit Red Wings lineup, because I know Steve Yzerman likes to leave us guessing and say, oh, we'll see, at the end of camp. But the thought of hearing him saying it's highly likely or there's a great chance, I'm excited about that. So I was excited to hear that Simon Edvinsson, we saw him in the prospects tournament. He played fantastic. He looks like an NHLer out there, not just with his size, but how he uses it. He has that reach, and he's really just reading plays very well, communicating out on the ice. So it's really nice to hear that we will likely see him in a winged wheel sweater this season. Again, not promising anything. Steve says he's not promising anything, but I like to take that to heart.
Yeah, it's nice to hear him optimistic about the team that he's put together here and the players that he's acquired over his time as the general manager. Ken, what were your thoughts?
Well, just talking about Carly's topic there about Simon Edvinsson, I think that he's going to get every opportunity to show management what he He'll get every opportunity, whether it's on the power play, penalty kill, regular shift. So, it'll be up to him whether or not he's going to make the team or not. And so I'm looking forward to that. He did have a really good prospect tournament. But overall, just reading between the lines, just, listening to Steve Yzerman talk, I still think that this is a team in transition right now. And I think, Steve wants to be cautiously optimistic about this team. Sure, he brought in some great players with free agency. Young players are developing. But you have to realize that there is a new coaching staff. There's a new head coach that needs to learn about his players, and that sometimes takes some time. You have players that had terrific years last year, like Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond, who we hope don't fall into a sophomore jinx. We saw that from Dylan Larkin last year, or his first year. His second year wasn't as good, but those players have to be just as good or even better. And the other thing is there's opportunity, especially on the blue line. There's some injuries that Steve Yzerman talked about, and I know, Daniela, you'll mention that.
Yeah, go ahead, Carly.
I was going to say another player who we saw great gameplay out of in prospects tournament is Emil Viro. He was blocking late shots. He was really sacrificing his body in prospects tournament as well, which is really risky before a season starts, but he was laying it all out on the line, and that's another play that Steve Yzerman said he really liked to see.
And I think both of you will agree with me on this, that the one thing we do need to remember is that some of these players do start in Grand Rapids, Simon Edvinsson being one of them, Elmer Soderblom. That's not a bad thing. So looking at Simon Edvinsson, as well as he's played, as optimistic as we are, if he's playing in the AHL, that's only going to help his development. And remember, we keep comparing him to Mo Seider, and that might be to a fault of ours, right? But Mo had that year in Grand Rapids, and you could see that he's played against men of this size, which Simon Edvinsson has too. But the AHL is a tough league, and it's not a bad thing if that's where he starts the season.
Well, one of the things that I think is positive for the Red Wings now is that they do have depth, whether it's with the big club. We're drafting talent and young players who were 2-3 years away. Now we're seeing those players that will play in Grand Rapids. We saw Soderblom here, who had a great prospects tournament. Berggren's a guy that could make the team, and if he doesn't, he's going to have another year in Grand Rapids, and he was terrific last year for the Griffins. So this team does have depth, and you need depth to win in the National Hockey League.
Yep. Another thought? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I wrote down a direct quote
Keep
that
'em
Steve
coming.
Yzerman said. He was talking about the depth on the team, and he said that the players have to start talking to themselves and saying, "I have to produce and perform to get ice time," because there is so much depth on this team, which is a fantastic thing to have because we haven't always had that in the past few years. I guess of our tenure. Yeah. I can't speak to you, Ken. You've been here a while.
Well, is that an old joke, Carly? No, I'm just kidding.
But you're right. You know what? You know, right back in the day, nobody young made the team.
Right.
It was all veterans, right?
They're like depth. Yeah, we have it.
When you're drafted,
Never a question.
like 100th overall, you know.
Some players starting the season injured. Steve Yzerman gave us a nice injury update, and we mentioned the blue line first, so we'll start there with Mark Pesic, who will be out until mid-January after he tore his Achilles, and then Jake Wallman will be out until mid-November. So there are some holes there, Carly, and when you look at guys like Simon Edvinsson, Emil Viro, that's a good opportunity for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at the injuries that we have, most of them are pretty serious injuries. So as we mentioned, we have a couple of players in Wallman and Fabry who are pretty good players that we saw last year who really made a difference on this team. And someone we were all looking forward to, Kopp, who will return the first week of, hopefully, the first week of the regular season. So it's going to be exciting to see him in a winged wheel sweater. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for these young players. This is a really important camp for a lot of those players, as you mentioned, Edvinsson, Soderblom, and Emil Viro. So we'll see what happens at the end of this camp, but there are spots to be had.
There definitely
Injuries or
are.
not.
Yeah, there definitely are. Talking about the blue liners, right? Let's look at that forward core for a second, because as she mentioned, Andrew Kopp will be out. We've got Robbie Fabry out until the new year. So that's a long time. And you look at some of the guys that might be on the bubble, like let's say a Joe Veleno, right? So he's got to come out and have a great camp and a great preseason. And then Jonathan Berggren, who is really, really trying to crack the lineup this year. Steve Yzerman said they loved everything that he saw, and he even admitted himself it's an interesting season for Berggren. So those are guys you're going to be watching in the preseason.
Took the words right out of my mouth. And, Philip Zadina is another guy that they're expecting big things from him. He's already been in the organization for a while, Daniela, and so he needs to have a big camp, and he needs to elevate his game. And I thought we saw that from Zadina late last season.
All right, everybody. Well, it's been great having you joining us for the special edition of The Word on Woodward. Great to hear from Steve Yzerman to kick off the 2022 training camp. We're really excited, and we'll have some streams for you all weekend long. Stay tuned to Red Wing social media for more info on those. I'm Daniela Bruce.